San Francisco head coach Chris Gerlufsen discusses how to slow down Ryan Nembhard, Malik Thomas's elite season, and Mark Few's coaching legacy.
You are Locked On Zags, your daily podcast on the Gonzaga Bulldogs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is going on, y'all? Happy Wednesday, and welcome into the Locked On Zags podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host and longtime Gonzaga podcaster, Andy Patton, here to bring you news and updates on all things Zag athletics. Joined today by Coach Chris Gerlufsen of the San Francisco Dons. He gets us ready for Gonzaga's late night matchup against USF on Thursday. We talk about his team this year, their record in the WCC, playing a more competitive schedule both in and out of the conference. Also talks about Malik Thomas, Marcus Williams, new freshman guard Tyrone Riley, as well as how they're replacing Jonathan Mogbo in the frontcourt. Close out the show talking about game planning against Gonzaga, how difficult it is to plan against Ryan Nembhard, and Mark Few's coaching legacy as he's up for the Hall of Fame. Check it out. Fantastic interview. Always love the chance to talk to Coach CG. Well, folks, I'm thrilled to be joined today by San Francisco head coach Chris Gerlufsen ahead of Thursday's late night battle with the Gonzaga Bulldogs. And Coach, first thing I want to talk about, I was doing some research, looked back, and the entirety of the Mark Few era, this game on Thursday will be the first time that San Francisco and Gonzaga are playing each other in February, where San Francisco is actually ahead of Gonzaga in the WCC standings. Literally never happened in Mark Few's tenure, with the Dons right now, of course, a half game lead, over Gonzaga. 10-3 in league play, Coach, coming off that big home win over St. Mary's, turned around, got a W over LMU after that. What are your thoughts kind of on how this team has played coming into the season, coming into conference play, especially with a second place spot right now with just a few weeks to go?
Yeah. I'm really happy in terms of where we are. I'm not satisfied by any stretch. To be sitting at 10-3 in an incredibly strong WCC. I like where we're at. As I said, I think there's a lot of room for growth for our team. I think we've learned a lot about, our locker room and our personnel over the course of the year. And each team has different strengths and weaknesses. And we've had to learn that kind of on the fly, especially, losing Dueto Newberry right before the start of conference play. And just our guys staying the course and figuring out a way to kind of maximize what's in our locker room. I think we're still kind of learning all that encompasses that, as the season continues on. But looking forward to the challenge on Thursday. One of the most special places to play in all college basketball. And I know our guys are excited for the challenge.
Well, you guys already picked up a pretty massive win, the only win over St. Mary's in the entire season for the WCC. They came into that game 10-0, and you guys knocked them off at home. First win over St. Mary's for San Francisco since January of 2019, so must have felt quite good to finally get that monkey off the back and get a W over Randy Bennett's team. Looking at that game, I was able to watch it, saw some fantastic stuff, and kind of saw some of the same things that Gonzaga was able to do successfully against St. Mary's in the second half of that game, just not for the full 40. What did you kind of take away from that game and from seeing this St. Mary's team and finding a way to get a W over a team that, like I said, nobody else had been able to do up to that point in this conference?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing I would say is similar to Gonzaga. There's a reason why both those teams have been, 1 and 2 in this league for so long, and they don't beat themselves, and so you can't go into a game like that and have self-inflicting, wounds. And I was happy with our team just for kind of staying the course for 40 minutes. It wasn't a perfect game by us by any stretch, but I would say I thought we were pretty resilient. And you have to be in those kind of games. We were down double figures with, I think, 10 to play in the St. Mary's game, and just kind of continued to stay with the plan, and trusted the fact that hopefully over the course of 40 minutes that everything would work itself out. And credit to our guys for just continuing to fight and not lay down. I've been a part of some teams in the past where, put in that situation where it's easy to kind of concede, and our guys did not do that. And I think that's something that we need to draw upon as the season continues.
Yeah, it's not easy to come back from a double-digit deficit against anybody, but it's really hard to do against St. Mary's with the pace that they play at and just the style. They're a team that can seemingly bury you with an 8-point lead, and so to be able to come back from that in that game is, not something that a lot of teams have been able to do against them. So very, very impressive to be able to get that going. And you mentioned the strength of the WCC, and I kind of wanted to touch on that next, because your squad has already played 3 of their 4 games against the 2 new teams. You played both your games against Washington State, played Oregon State. You're playing them in Corvallis in a couple of weeks here at the end of the month. And obviously 2 programs that are joining the league on a temporary basis for this year and for next year before they kind of restart the Pac-12 with Gonzaga in a couple of years. And Washington State obviously coming off of a NCAA tournament run last year, but this is a brand new team, a brand new roster, a brand new coach. Oregon State been kind of stumbling the last few years, but having one of the best seasons they've had in about a half decade for Coach Tinkle. And just, looking at a league that was already deep, that already had a lot of talent in it, to now have added these 2 programs, what has that just meant for the conference as a whole, but also for your program in particular, to have these 4 games against these 2 quality programs that you didn't have in the conference in the past?
Yeah, I think it's, sometimes in the moment you're like, damn, we have to play these teams again.
Yeah.
It's not always fun in the preparation, but it's made, I just think the overall scope of the WCC is so much stronger. And I'm for anything that raises the profile of our league. And those 2 teams certainly have done that. 2 really good coaches, 2 really talented teams, 2 teams that have shown they can beat anybody, up and down the conference standings. And as I said, I think it's nothing but a win-win for the league to have just 2 additional really strong programs be a part of our conference for the short term.
Well, looking at a league right now, obviously you got the 2 newcomers. You have St. Mary's, Gonzaga. You have yourself. You have Santa Clara, who's been very, very good. They kind of got off to a bit of a slow start this year in the non-conference, which was a little surprising for a team with so much roster continuity, but they've been playing much better as of late. And then you got an LMU team that has also kind of come around after a bit of a slow start as well, and they're starting to look better than they were earlier in the year. I mean, it feels like this league's as deep as it's ever been. I mean, you got 7 good teams, and you still got some teams at the bottom that aren't playing all that well, although I think a couple of those programs are at least moving in the right direction. But again, from looking at this league in terms of how competitive it is compared to, other non-power conference leagues, I mean, it's right at the top with, the Atlantic 10 and with the Mountain West. And it feels to me like this is as good as the league's been top to bottom, and should be in the conversation to have more bids in the NCAA tournament than I think, unfortunately, it will be. I know I've seen some bracketologists who have your team and Santa Clara kind of both being in that conversation right now. But when you play this schedule, when you play these teams, I mean, does it feel like you're playing in a league that's as good as you're going to see outside of those power conferences?
Yeah, I think it's right up there with, any of the conferences in the country in terms of what you see on a given night. I would say also what it's done for our league is it's provided so many more quad 1 and quad 2 type opportunities over the course of the season where we weren't getting that in years past. And so now to be able to look at the schedule and, see a quad 1 opportunity and see another one in the very short-term future. And, that helps bolster postseason aspirations too. And so I would say that's a really big part of, the additions of the teams that we've added. It's just strengthened what should be, as you said, a league that gets, more than 2 teams in the NCAA tournament. I think our league has proven that it deserves more than that.
And one thing that I've really appreciated about your program and about other programs at the top of this conference is the willingness and the ability to go play tough teams in the non-conference. And I say those 2 things because I think a lot of times programs like these in the WCC have the willingness to go play tough schedules, but you don't always have the ability to, in the sense that, it takes 2 to tango, and you got to get other coaches to be willing to play your program. And they don't always want to do that because it doesn't benefit them as much as it may benefit you. But in this season in particular, you guys got a game against a Clemson team that's playing some fantastic basketball. after beating Duke and Carolina. You guys played a Memphis team that's been in the top 25 for I think all of 2025, most of the last couple months. You got a tough road game against a Bradley team that I think is maybe doesn't have the name recognition, but is a very quality program. And for you, how important was it to put together a non-conference schedule to challenge your guys, and how much does it change that conversation at all, knowing that you have more of those quad one opportunities in conference play than you've had previously?
Yeah, I mean, I think, there's a balance to it. We always want to put ourselves in a position where when you get to this time of year and you're getting closer to March, that you don't kind of have a moment where you're like, darn, we wish we played more quad one and quad two opportunities in the non-conference. And some of that is, being able to project and anticipate what certain teams are going to be able to do over the course of a season. And there's some risk probably with that. And, but I feel like Kyle Bankhead on our staff does a really good job in terms of scheduling and kind of locking in on some teams that we think that their resumes will continue to grow as the course of the season goes on. And so we love playing those games in the non-conference. I think that helps us get ready for conference play, and that's something that we'll continue to do as we move forward as a program.
Coach breaks down his roster coming up next, including another huge jump from Malik Thomas and how they've replaced a star player like Jonathan Mogbo. All that coming up in just a second. But first, folks, after the holiday hustle, there's nothing like giving your home a little TLC. I always find that decluttering and refreshing my space helps me get back into a routine. So whether you're tidying up, clearing out, or just want to give your space a new look to start the year, Wayfair has everything that you need, all within your budget. I'm currently looking for furniture, and Wayfair's huge selection makes it easy to find pieces that fit both my style and my budget. And my favorite part, there's free and hassle-free delivery, even for the larger items. Wayfair's site was so easy to navigate, and I found everything I needed in no time. There's something for every style and every home, no matter your space or your budget. So give your home the refresh it needs with Wayfair. Head to wayfair.com right now. That's wayfair.com. Every style, every home. Want to talk about the roster here, the specifics of the guys on this team, and certainly for fans who haven't watched any San Francisco yet this year, you're going to see plenty of familiar faces, and you're going to see a familiar face in Malik Thomas, a guy who 2 years ago, Coach, he was averaging 2.5 points per game at USC. He comes to the Hilltop, he boosts that by 10. Is 12.5 points per game his first year in your program with San Francisco, and it looked like, oh man, this is the breakout, this is the jump, this is him kind of taking that leap as a guy that a lot of people expected would be capable of doing that if he got into a different situation. And then he goes ahead and just has another breakout 2.0. Now he's averaging over 19 points per game. He's leading the conference. He's an absolutely torrid 3-point shooter. But, what stood out to me from watching him this year and looking at the stats is he's also doubled the amount of free throws he's taking per game. So he's not just a great 3-point shooter, but he's putting the ball on the deck. He's getting to the rim. He's getting to the line and converting there. And then the last stat that really jumped out to me, he's got 56 assists on the season. In his previous 3 years combined, he had 28. That is a massive difference in terms of what he's doing with the basketball. What have you been able to kind of get him to change about his game, and how has he kind of responded to that, to have such a strong season up to this point?
Yeah, I'm really proud of Malik and his development. And sometimes, all the time, in order to make a leap, you need the opportunity. Yeah. And Malik has taken advantage of the opportunity. I would say that he has, great freedom within the system of how we play to be the best version of himself. And it's been special to be a part of kind of his rebirth as a player, and see his confidence grow. And he has a unbelievable competitive spirit. He thinks he's going to win every game, win every drill, and has an unbelievable way of kind of breathing that into other people in our program. And it's been fun to be a part of that. And as I said, he's figured out a way to really affect the game in a lot of different ways. It's not just from a shooting the basketball standpoint. He puts great foul pressure on other teams with his ability to get downhill and attack early in possessions. and he's learning how to develop and facilitate, as well. And so that's been really, special to be a part of and see his game kind of grow.
And he gets the opportunity to play alongside another guard who is excellent at that facilitation in Marcus Williams, a name that, for Gonzaga fans, I mean, there feels like there's so many guards that have come through this program that they get used to seeing, every single year, the Jamari Bouyers, the Khalil Shabazz, Cody Doolin, Frankie Ferrari, goes on and on. There's always a great guard or two at this program. And Marcus Williams, it feels like he's kind of, been that guy for a couple of years now. His numbers this season, very similar to what he put up last year. And how important is it, especially as you see a player like Malik take a leap, and then you have, some younger guys on this program. We'll talk about, Tyrone Riley in a little bit and some of the other younger guards. How important is it to just have this kind of steadying veteran presence that Marcus brings, a guy who's been, with fifth year of college basketball. He's just been a consistent presence in this program for a couple of years and at this level for a long time. And it feels like, really kind of the straw that stirs the drink for this San Francisco club.
Marcus is another guy that's, really grown up, since coming to the Hilltop, and was kind of in a bad place, before coming here. Did not have a great experience at his last institution. And it's been fun to be a part of his kind of, regrowth as a player. He's grown up in a lot of ways, both on the floor, off the floor, even with some of just his habits, how he treats his body and treats the game. And, he's playing at a really high level. He has my trust. Him and I have a great relationship that carries on, both on and off the floor. And I think that's allowed me to really hold him accountable and really push him, to become the best player he can become. And, make no mistake about it, when he's playing well, we're normally playing well. And he's a fun guy to coach. And similar to Malik, I think Malik and Ryan Beasley really have driven our play to this point.
Well, wanted to talk about freshmen on the team, and one of my favorite things about following the WCC throughout the years is there's always a couple of freshmen every year who really just kind of pop. And you see, San Diego had Kevin Patton last year, who was fantastic, and Portland had Tyler Harris last year, who was great, and Tyrone Riley reminds me a little bit of Harris in the sense of being a kind of a bigger guard, long, rangy, very good three-point shooter, very good rebounder, really kind of just exploded onto the scene early in the season, and has been a very strong player throughout the year. And obviously a guy I hadn't seen before or knew much about. At what point, kind of in the process of recruiting Tyrone and bringing him to campus, did you kind of realize, hey, this is a kid who's going to play some big minutes for us right away and be an impactful contributor? Because he's, unless I'm mistaken, I believe he started every game for you guys this season.
Yeah. I think we anticipated Tyrone having a really big impact on our program before he got here. And then when he got here in the summer, kind of had a, oh, wow moment, just watching him, be around our team. This is a credit to him and a compliment to him is, over the course of the summer, you could throw him on the floor with any combination of four guys. You would figure out a way how to fit in and how to affect winning. And I think that's a really huge compliment to him and kind of what he's all about. He can affect the game in a lot of different ways. Was a big scorer in high school, but, he's rebounded the ball at a pretty high clip for a freshman. He's really guarded and taken on just about anything that we've asked of him. Just complete team guy. And, the sky's the limit with him in terms of what he can become. But he's shown a lot of flashes of, having a chance to kind of be that next guy here.
We talked a handful about the backcourt up to this point, but want to kind of transition, talk a little bit about the front court. Obviously, any program in college basketball, whether it happens every year, whether it doesn't happen as often, it's difficult to replace NBA caliber talent. And Jonathan Mogbo goes to the NBA, gets picked early in the second round, is playing great, just 3 straight games of 10 points, started the last 2 games for Toronto. Been really fun to follow him. I was watching them mostly to watch Kelly Olynyk, who now is not with Toronto anymore, but we'll keep checking him out because I love watching Jonathan play ball. But for your program, you mentioned Newberry going down with the injury, played 11 games this year, hasn't been able to come back. And to lose Newberry, to already be in the, having to replace a player like Mogbo, kind of how have you been able to adjust your program and make those changes to kind of still be able to be effective without a player like that in the mix?
Yeah, I would say that it's a credit to the guys who are here, and how we've recruited and have great faith in the guys in our locker room, and there was no singular replacement for a Jonathan Mogbo, just like there was no singular replacement for Dueto Newberry when he went down with an injury. But we have really talented players, in our locker room. And Carl Lingard, while he's not exactly the same type of player as Mogbo, he's figured out a way to put his own spin, on us from an offensive and a defensive standpoint. And so that's been fun to kind of adjust with the new personnel. And Barry Wong has done a great job of filling in for Dueto since his injury. And we've had some other young guys, figure out a way to affect winning as well. So that's the beauty of being a part of a team sport is there's always opportunity for someone else to have their, chance to step in when someone goes down, and credit to our team for just continuing to stay with it and, continue to approach things the right way.
Looking ahead to getting ready for this game on Thursday night, Gonzaga team, they got 7 losses on the season. That's more than they are used to having, more than the fan base certainly is used to having. All of them have been in incredibly close games. The 2 largest margins of victory or margins of defeat were both overtime games. So been in every single contest they've played. We've seen the defense look better as of late. Second half against St. Mary's and then their last couple of games have been some improvements on that side of the ball, which was an issue for them previous to that, in the Oregon State and Santa Clara losses in particular, where they were kind of struggling. What has stood out to you in the games that you've watched, the tape that you've watched about this team, kind of coming into this matchup in particular, for a team that looks pretty similar to last year's team, but hasn't quite had the same level of success?
Yeah. Well, the one thing I would first say is Coach Few always has a way of figuring things out. Mm-hmm. And if you look at all the teams in the past when it felt like, it was on the breaking point, mm-hmm. he's always found a way and figured out a way to get the most out of his personnel. And that's why he'll go down as one of the best coaches ever to do this. Mm-hmm. And I think they have started to figure that out. They went through that little rough stretch, which every team does. That's not abnormal for any team across the landscape of college basketball. Mm-hmm. I would first say that they're incredibly electric from an offensive standpoint. Ryan Nembhard is one of the best point guards in the country. His ability to facilitate and affect the game from a distribution standpoint is one of the best I've seen. I can't remember a point guard as of late that has affected the game the way that he does. He can score the ball. He just chooses to get others involved first, and that's a credit to him. And then obviously when you have a player like Graham inside who puts tremendous pressure on your interior defense, that has a way of opening everything else up for them. And they're a team. I think Battle, is scary with his ability to score the basketball. Nolan Hickman feel like he's been here for 20 years and has done nothing but get better. One of the best shooters in the league and scorers. And Ben Gregg is a guy who, I give a lot of credit to him. I think sometimes he's an unsung hero because he does anything and everything to affect winning. And so, sitting here trying to figure out how we're going to get a stop and how we're going to score a couple baskets, because to me, still one of the best, teams in the country. Yeah.
Well, one thing that really stood out to me about this team in particular, especially in this era of college basketball, last year they're a team that somewhat similar to this year in the sense that they had high expectations, had a few more stumbles than typical, but then got hot at the end of the year, won the games they needed to win, got themselves a 5 seed, made it back to the Sweet 16. And yet in an era where teams that are going to the Final Four are seeing 5, 6, 7 guys hit the transfer portal, this team keeps everybody. Anton Watson's the only departure from the rotation. That's because he was out of eligibility. He goes on to the NBA and is playing in the G League right now. And there's a couple other guys who transferred, but they weren't players who were really in the rotation last year. So, to see a program that has the ability in this era to keep everybody together, to have we saw Nembhard and Ike kind of take a little time to get used to each other last season. And I think Nembhard averaged 9 assists per game in the last half of last year. And coming into the year, there was a lot of conversation of like, is he just going to average 9 or 10 assists all season long? And I don't know if anybody thought it was actually going to happen, but here we are. He is exactly 10 assists per game at this point and on pace to potentially get 300 on the year, which hasn't happened very much. 5 times since 1993 that the player's gotten that many assists. He's almost certainly going to shatter the WCC single season record for assists, which is just incredible. What do you make of a program that has the ability to keep and retain so much talent in an era where that is increasingly rare?
Yeah, I mean, that's a credit to, what you guys have built, and the tradition and what the expectations are, and you have the expectations to win and challenge for not only obviously a league title every year, but to be a team that makes deep runs and has a chance to play for a national championship. And when you have that tradition, you have that expectation, it's a great selling point, for players. And it speaks to, the guys steering the ship. It speaks to all the great players that have come before the guys who are there now, and that's a part that makes college basketball special, makes, Gonzaga one of the, best programs in the country.
Well, you talked about Mark Few a couple of times, but I wanted to mention this and bring this up as he is named on the ballot for the 2020 class of 2025 for the Hall of Fame. One of 8 newcomers on the ballot alongside like Billy Donovan and Carmelo Anthony and a couple of other very high profile basketball legends, basketball names. And for Coach Few, obviously somebody who has yet to win the big game. That is always the kind of the conversation that people have about coaches, especially in Hall of Fame conversations. But you talked about, the success that he's had and the ability to find a way to get the most out of his guys as the season goes on. What are your thoughts on kind of seeing his name in that conversation and what it means for the conference, for West Coast college basketball, for just kind of, obviously the program as well?
Yeah. I mean, when it's all said and done and people look back, 20, 30 years after Coach is done coaching, I think they'll look back and say he was one of the best guys to ever do it. The amount of wins, what he's done, just for the program at Gonzaga and where it was and what it's become, how it's grown, and it's seen on a national landscape and it's a national name. And that's all credit to him and his staff and, what he's been able to build. But I would say he'll go down as one of the best to do it, when everything is said and done.
Coach, thank you so much for taking the time to come on to the show to get us ready for this game. Very excited about the game. Of course, we'll see San Francisco a couple weeks after this, the final game for Gonzaga in the regular season on the road in that one. Coach, thanks again. Good luck the rest of the season. Not sure how people listening how much luck they want you to have, at least on Thursday night, but very much looking forward to watching that game. It should be a really, really good one.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Andy.
Huge thank you to Coach Gerlufsen for joining the show. That is going to wrap it up for me today here on the Locked On Zags podcast. Folks, thank you so much to those of you who have made the show your first listen or your first watch of the day. Reminder to check out the show ad-free on Amazon Music if you have not done so yet. Also join the Locked On Zags Discord community. There's a link in the show notes, as well as a link to our written content about Gonzaga at athlensports.com. Be back with a game preview episode on Thursday, getting ready for the San Francisco game, what the Zags need to do to make sure they get a W. So be ready for that in your feeds. We'll recap that game on Friday and get folks ready for the game against Pepperdine on Saturday. Thanks again, folks, for listening. And until next time, as always, go Zags.